It's the most chaotic time of the year. Free agency and the offseason are finally in full swing. As per tradition, I'll be reporting on all of the most important news this offseason through annual recap episodes. And the last few days, in particular, have seen a ton of player drops. And there's just a bunch of other people on top of that declaring for free agency, so this pool of players in free agency right now is looking real crowded. Episode 1 is going to cover all of that and so much more. It can be really hard to keep up when so much is happening around the league, so if you want to stay fully informed on the league's offseason, be sure to subscribe and give this video a big fat thumbs up. Anyway, a lot's happened these last few days, so let's get down to business. A big thing to note here in the early stages of releases, though, is that a bunch of them are more so expiring contracts more than teams definitely moving on for sure. In spite of teams making goodbye posts for some of their guys, there still is a chance that some of them will return to their original teams, so keep a very open mind. Anyway, now let's begin. And a great place to start is where a lot of you probably clicked on this video in the first place for, the Dallas Fuel. So team owner Hydron has come out and said that every single player in their possession is technically now a free agent. Everybody is allowed to explore their options, so the future could actually end up being pretty uncertain for Dallas in spite of winning a title. So maybe there is a world where everybody moves on and goes to a new team or retires or whatever they choose to do. However, this does not rule out the possibility of these guys all returning, or at least some of them. But for now, they are on the market and will be listening to every offer. Some of these guys could be franchise-altering pickups, so a good pitch from one of the other teams in the league could significantly shake up the landscape of the league. For the sake of Dallas and their fans, I hope that they get the core back together. It would suck to not see them even attempt to run it back after winning a title. Hydron did make it known, though, that these guys are by no means being abandoned, and that the management is definitely going to be giving them offers and pitches to attempt to bring them back, so keep an open mind. For now, all we can really do is closely monitor the Dallas situation, but just know that right now, technically, their roster is empty. How about we talk about the San Francisco Shock now? So they decided to part ways with Sam, Kaluj, Mikey, and Striker, and all signs point to the Shock potentially going fully Korean and signing more players from their academy team, O2 Blast, most notably of which would be big-name flex DPS prospect Heesu, as well as Max and Junbin to fill in the tank needs. This could be the first year of many where we have a complete O2 Blast takeover on the Shock, which could be really exciting. As for the new free agents that they released, most of them could end up finding new homes. I wouldn't be surprised. I could see Sam and Mikey maybe going to a lower end team that needs to develop some talent. Then you have Kaluj and Striker, who probably have a shot of drawing some decent eyes. Kaluj was arguably the best Western tank in the league, and he showed a lot of flexibility. A lot of people have speculated he could be joining the Gladiators alongside Reiner, and that would be a pretty sick idea on paper. Kaluj and Reiner could basically cover all of your tank needs. They have their American Tornado roots together, and they're a bright young tank line as well, so I'd be all for that. As for Striker, he's a grand finals caliber performer and needs no introduction. Enough said. He could be a good rotational piece on a bunch of different teams. I think teams in need of a tracer, such as like Atlanta or Toronto, could maybe be a decent destination. That's about all I have to say in terms of Shock news right now, so let's talk about the Philadelphia Fusion. The big thing for a lot of OG fans in particular will be the fact that Carpe has decided to retire and go play professional Valorant. At first glance, it really sucks that this era of the Fusion is finally over. Carpe was the final guy left to stay on his original team back from 2018, and he's just such a big part of Philly's history. He's one of the best DPS players in the entire game, and he was by far one of the most important players for the league's growth. He'll generally just be missed a lot for all of that. But sadly, he doesn't really have much use to Philly anymore these days anyway, as he just can't keep up anymore. In return for some temporary sadness, you could be replacing him with somebody who's more motivated to prove themselves and increases your chances of winning a championship. But if you want to hear more of my thoughts on Carpe leaving, check out my dedicated news video that I made for him, which you can find in the description. Anyway, to keep on the trend of Philly drops, Fury, AimGod, Fixa, and Belos Ria are all also entering free agency. And in my eyes, there's no huge losses here. It doesn't really matter that all of them were not renewed. The tanks in general were just just okay, and the support line had a lot of ups and downs, and Philly could definitely make some upgrades to improve their team. Just thinking about it logically, Fury isn't quite what he used to be, Belos Ria showed signs of inconsistency during the playoffs, Fixa didn't have the greatest decision-making process in the world, and you likely didn't really want to keep Aimgot to begin with, as he was more so an emergency signing more than someone you desperately wanted on your roster. Out of all of these guys, it's pretty obvious that Fury is going to have the best chance of finding a new team, as he's a veteran with a lot of potential, he's won a championship before, he has lots of playoff experience, and he could be pretty useful as a rotational piece to me. The other guys though, they probably have a lot more to prove. If you want some good news though, Philly fans, both MN3 and Zest are announced to be coming back, which I mean is not much of a surprise. They're the shining stars of this team all season, they're the best performers, and the message is clear now, right? You want to build a playoff team around those two. Those are your guys that are likable and have the highest potential. So you go from there. You get guys who you can put resources into for them, and maybe a bit more of a consistent tank to lead the way, and maybe Philly will have something next year. Now we head into Shanghai territory, as the Dragons announced they are parting ways with Void, Fate, Fleta, Who Are You, and Dpei. Every one of those guys just mentioned as of right now is entering free agency and have a chance to play for someone new. The new era in Shanghai is upon us now. Lots of household names are moving on and likely won't be coming back. Fate and Dpei in particular had their options declined and wish to join a new team. Fate in particular though is somebody that I am pretty excited about, as he's been in this league since day one, and it's great to see that he's extremely motivated to play still. I was worried he might end up hanging it up this year. It's really great that he's coming back despite having a down year. And I mean, Fate's a good leader, he's shown that he can be consistent throughout the years, and maybe he just needs a change of scenery to reawaken his potential. And the same applies for somebody like Fleta. He still has immense potential if he wishes to continue playing, and I'm sure a lot of eyes would be glued towards him and Fate. And if Void decides not to retire, of course, then he is going to be a great option too for any team that wants him. He's one of the best tank players ever. Tons of teams are going to benefit greatly from any of these guys. What's also cool about Shanghai though is they gave us the updated contract status of everybody. The good news for all the diehard Shanghai fans is that Lip is still under contract, so as of right now it looks like they will be building their future around him, which I mean, no duh, of course you're going to do that. He's Lip, he's one of the best players in the entire world. It's great that he's still there, and I'm happy for Shanghai fans in that regard at least. But then you have Izuyaki and Lee Jae-gon, who have team options that have not been accepted or declined as of this video. The Dragons can basically go out and choose if they want to keep them. They're going to have to make that choice. They're obviously a very solid backline and could still be very productive. They each have a very high ceiling that could take this team very far, as we've seen the last couple of years, but who really knows, right? Maybe one or both of them will end up retiring or not getting their option accepted. If either of these guys end up hitting free agency or getting traded or something, that would be absolutely wild. The question is, will they try and rebuild through young talent, or do they plan to go all in on people like Lip, Izuyaki, and Lee Jae-gon and try and win another championship? That is the big question, and I'm sure it'll be answered very, very soon. Next, we're going to be talking about the Atlanta Reign, who let go of Ultraviolet, OG, Nero, Venom, Speedily, and Gator. But more so, it's just on their contracts expiring more than anything else, and now they're all going to be entering unrestricted free agency. And Coach Seffi has confirmed that there is a possibility that some of these guys could end up returning, but right now, them, as in the players, and management are exploring their options and are deciding what they want to do. Interestingly enough, Venom, Speedily, OG, and Ultraviolet were on one-year deals, even though they were just rookies. That's a pretty rare thing to see. I'd argue that Gator definitely won't be coming back, since he barely played this year at all, and the team obviously prefers Hawk. Gator's been a legend of this team since the 2019 playoffs, and has been a real rock for them in their time of need these last few years. He's just an unforgettable part of their history. The other guys, though, I think there's a lot of hope that they could come back. Each of them have immense potential, and I think it'd be a shame if they're let go of so soon, as they might be able to help build something special in the world of Atlanta. If not, a lot of these guys could end up finding new homes. I have a lot of confidence in particular for that backline, as Ultraviolet and OG are pretty consistent and reliable, and I think they'd make for a good, solid support line on like the Houston Outlaws perhaps, or maybe the Boston Uprising, the Vancouver Titans even. There are options for these guys, so if Atlanta let them go and decide not to bring them back, then that's going to be real tough on them. They could make them pay. Generally though, I think everyone that is entering free agency from Atlanta all have a good shot of finding new teams. This even includes somebody like Nero, you know? All talented guys that are motivated, so I don't expect this to be the last of any of them. Speaking of the Houston Outlaws though, they also made a couple of moves as they parted ways with Lep, Doge, and Creative, who, keep in mind, all came in as mid-season pickups. I guess that none of them were really part of the future, and they're more so just temporary solutions more than anything else. The team would rather explore better options at these positions, and considering how close they got to making the finals, this makes a lot of sense. It's an all-or-nothing approach if you want to take that final step. I think that Creative in particular was pretty serviceable on short notice, but they might want to do better and find someone who's more comfortable in their system. And while Doge I think has potential, you probably want someone a bit more explosive that can cover the things that Dpei isn't the greatest at. The fact that they wanted Dpei to play Winston in the playoffs when he had no experience on the hero over Doge is just a little concerning to me, so this makes sense. When it comes to their people that got dropped though, I'm not really sure what any of their futures are going to hold. They all seem like bright young players. I mean, Creative in particular, we know what he's capable of on a good team, so I'm sure he's going to get some good looks, especially from those APAC teams. But Lep and Doge, they still have a bit more to prove. They had decent moments here and there, but it might not be enough to get a new contract, especially with how loaded this free agency class is looking to be. The Florida Mayhem. Okay, bear with me, I'll break it all down. So they parted ways with Hydron, Exy, Anamo, Majed, and an assistant coach. And for some context, their general manager Albert came out and said that they exercised their team options on someone, Checkmate, and RuPaul, so they'll be sticking around for the next year. But then the options on Anamo and Majed were declined, meaning that I guess they just weren't interested in bringing those guys back. But then you have Hydron and Exy who were on one-year contracts, so their deals simply were just expiring, and there is a chance that they do get re-signed. In terms of like their not coming back for sure, declined contracts, it's a little upsetting to see Majed go. He had some immense potential and a lot of good moments for this Florida team. He was an aggressive player, yes, but very, very reliable at a bunch of different points for the Mayhem this season, especially early on. I would not be surprised in the slightest if someone else gives him a chance because of that crazy potential. But then you have Anamo, which isn't that surprising. He's not a bad player, but he also wasn't great for this Florida team, a bit inconsistent, maybe not their greatest option, maybe just a guy to get them by this year. And on top of that, his fitting on this team was always a little strange to me, so I'm not entirely surprised, and I think he could end up finding a new team somewhere else just because he is a pretty reliable veteran. When it comes to Hydron and Exy though, they in theory could return to the Florida Mayhem. They're more so just testing their options right now. There is a chance that they could renegotiate with the Mayhem, so Mayhem fans, if you love either of those guys, don't entirely give up yet. There is a chance. I can't really blame either of these guys for wanting to test the market because Exy, he's a very high potential player, and I think that him joining a different team where he's a bit more comfortable in the team environment would be a good idea. And then with Hydron, he kind of balled out in his rookie year, if we're being honest. His sojourn was elite, so he might be able to get a decent sum of money on an even better team than the one he's playing for right now. This guy is starting caliber. He's a very talented hit-scan player with a lot of potential to grow still, so I think it's in the Mayhem's best interest to at least try to renegotiate. If not, I do hope that Hydron finds a really good new team to join. My expectation with Exy though is he's probably not going to come back. He's a real mystery man in this equation, if I'm being honest. He got a shot with Florida, but then quickly got permabenched by Hydron just because he was a lot better. For some people, that might be a bad look, as it makes you wonder if Exy still has what it takes to be the very best. Exy has said he is motivated, and we all know that he has the skills, so now it's just a matter of reawakening that latent potential. But the question is, who is willing to take a risk on this guy at this point? He may not be on a high-end team this year thanks to the drop in stock we've seen these last couple of years, but maybe a team on the rise, like the Guangzhou Charge, let's say, could give him a shot. Regardless, Florida are in an okay spot, especially if they bring back Hydron. I think a core of someone, Hydron, RuPaul, as well as Checkmate could take you pretty far again and make you a potential playoff team. So the Mayhem, while they're not in the best shape in the world, they certainly aren't in the worst either compared to some of these other franchises. Oh, and on the topic of the Charge, who I briefly just mentioned before, Crong ended up retiring from professional Overwatch after 3 years in the league, and it's a real shame to see things end so swiftly. At his peak in his rookie year, he was MVP level and one of the best Sigma players in the world. He was a major contributor in helping the Charge achieve their only real achievement of a Summer Showdown title, and it just really sucked to see his final 2 years years come with not any other playoff appearances and some decline in his play. The fact that he got benched midseason as well is pretty sad. It's a tough loss for the league and for the Charge historically, but in reality, they should be okay with Piggy if they keep him, so while it does hurt emotionally, they will survive this. Okay, time for the Vancouver Titans. First up, you have Masaa, their starting main support, retiring from professional Overwatch. So he wasn't amazing on Vancouver or anything, but it's not exactly easy to replace Masaa regardless, as he's an excellent shot caller, ult tracker, and playmaking main support. He is one of the best players to represent Finland, and he had a really nice couple of years on the Atlanta Reign to help them be relevant. He was very clutch in both of their playoff runs, and the team would not be what they are today without him. His Lucio was absolutely sick, and I'll miss him lots. But on top of that, the Titans did decide to mutually part ways with Coach Dpei, who I guess did not want to stay on the team. It's a shame that they couldn't convince him to stay though, as he's a solid coach who made a big difference in a very short amount of time on a team that was terrible before he joined. I'd say he's partially responsible for making them a somewhat respectable second half of the year team, and he probably could have helped develop and improve them even more. This is a big loss for the Titans, but a big gain for the rest of the league, as he's a very experienced coach and one that would be a very excellent addition to just about any team, be it as a head coach or an assistant. That's all in Vancouver land, so how about the Eternal? Should I call them Paris or Vegas? Technically they're going to be Vegas soon, doesn't really matter. Regardless, Wob and Krawi are parting ways with the team. Neither player was outstanding by any means, and Paris could do a lot better with a couple of different prospects to me. Maybe they go out and try and sign like Speedily if they could, or maybe even Doge from Houston. But most likely they're going to be looking at hidden gems or other contenders players for the sake of their budget. When it comes to Wob and Krawi, I don't think either player was outstanding by any means, and they could do a lot better on a different team maybe, but I don't know if anyone's going to even give them that chance, seeing as they're very raw and unproven. Regardless, I wish them the best of luck. It's just a shame they ended up in a terrible situation. Had they played on a better team in their careers in the league, maybe they'd have a better chance. And just to finish up your Eternal news for the day, they also parted ways with their head coach, Jmac. It's a disappointing end result, but kind of expected. Jmac was hyped up as a great coach, and he really did have good results coming into his first year as a head coach, but him and the team overall just had a really disappointing year. And by the time 2022 finished, the team that he started with and built was completely gone. And if you have a new team, you might as well have a new head coach too. He's just out of place at this point, right? Jmac does have potential though. He maybe still could make for a good assistant elsewhere, and I would be very surprised if he does not end up joining somewhere new very, very soon. The Boston Uprising. Okay, so they're another one of those teams, much like Dallas, with no players technically under contract right now. They've officially parted ways with Haksal, Faith, and MCD, but the others are technically still in negotiations. When it comes down to the guys that they are not keeping for sure, I don't think any of those losses are that big, as most of these guys either weren't starters full-time or were generally just kind of average. Boston have been poor for way, way too long. They just have to make significant changes at this point. They need upgrades really badly, so it's time to make a big move. When considering the guys they could end up re-signing, I think it might be kind of cool to see Punk, Mag, and Crimson move on to better destinations, as they all have talent and could probably draw eyes from a few other teams each. Mag in particular could be getting his name called to a lot of different fully Korean environments, such as Toronto or even Shanghai, but at the same time, Boston under new leadership could see all of these guys thrive here, so maybe it is worth giving this team another shot. I'd say that building your team around Mag, Punk, and Crimson is a decent idea in theory, and I kind of want to see Boston do it if at all possible. As for Seeker, Valentine, and Victoria, they're all talented, but maybe a little raw still. Boston might opt to keep like one of them, let's say, then ditch the other two. In my opinion, Boston should get a new DPS line entirely, as I think it'll make them a lot better for sure. And in other Boston news, they promoted former Washington Justice General Manager Pri to their new GM spot. Pri was really important in helping the Justice be what they were the last couple of years, and he's a very respectable and intelligent guy. He knows the game very well. Players seem to really like him, and he's just what Boston need to maybe finally find that turnaround they have been searching for since 2018. With him calling all of the shots, maybe Punk, Mag, and Crimson feel more motivated to come back. We'll have to see. Regardless, I like this pickup by Boston, and it could lead to a brighter future. Speaking of their future, Boston also parted ways with their head coach, Askoft, which isn't that surprising, seeing as he mostly just stepped in for the vacancy left behind after firing Coach Laurie mid-season, so I suppose this makes sense. Plus, you have have new management, so you might as well just get a bunch of new faces in everywhere so you have kind of something that you feel is yours if you're pre. And of course, right when I thought I was finally done, I can get this video up on YouTube, the Toronto Defiant say, no, your job's not done yet, as they have announced they have officially parted ways with Heesu. I'm a little surprised by this one because Heesu has been a critical playmaker of this Defiant team the last 2 years. They wanted to build this team around his image. It seemed like things were finally starting to go well. He looked good. The team made the playoffs, but no, suddenly it's all over just like that. It seemed like Toronto finally had an ideal core moving forward between maybe Crong if you can get him to stay, plus Twilight and Heesu, and then you get a couple of other good players, and suddenly you're in business if you're the Defiant. But now I'm not quite as sure, as there's going to be a gaping hole at hitscan that they have to fill. There's plenty of options available, but it seemed like a system around Heesu was working real good for them. They were just missing that other flex DPS piece, you know? It'll be very interesting to see who the Defiant decide to replace Heesu with, and I'm not even sure if it was their decision for this to happen. For all we know, Heesu probably wanted to leave Toronto, and I can't blame him because he's carried them time after time, but he has not been rewarded for it much at all up until recently. If Heesu wants to continue playing and he enters free agency, obviously a lot of teams are probably going to be somewhat interested. He's a very high potential player. He's proven he can be a star player, he just needs a bit more help. So in theory, if he goes to a solid team, they could really get taken to new heights. So I'm excited to see what Heesu does if he stays in the league. But aside from that, that's basically all of the official team news that has come out as of this recording on 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time on November 13th. This offseason's already off to a crazy start. We've already had 50 plus players enter free agency. That is absolutely absurd. And that's only including the official team announcements. There's surely going to be more of those to come, but we also have players who announced they are looking for a team with no team announcement so far. I'll go through all of them just so you know. Again, I might miss some, so bear with me. So first we have Decay and Kalios of the Washington Justice. They're both technically still in negotiations with Washington, but are allowed to look for new opportunities, which makes sense. I'd say that Decay is going to draw a lot of eyes, even though he's not quite what he used to be. He's still a really, really talented guy and can definitely make a difference on a contending team. Kalios, though, not as sure about him. I do hope he finds a new team, though. Then we have Mirror, former tank of the Vancouver Titans. From the looks of his post, he is not renegotiating with the team and is officially looking for a brand new home. He is a lower end guy, but I do think there is a chance he could sign with a weaker team. It would make sense. He's a pretty decent specialist. He proved himself on Junker Queen and Doomfist amongst a couple of others, so he may not be a bad shot for some of these teams looking to build through new talent. Then we have probably a more significant news piece with Sparker, who said that he is still in negotiations with the Spitfire, but he is on the open market. It would be a shame if the Spitfire can't bring this guy back. He was finally realizing his potential. He was arguably the most reliable player on the team with his hit scan play. Losing him would be a big blow potentially. But hey, if you're Sparker, you're probably going to catch some eyes from some of these other teams after how you performed this year. You were a star player and you might be able to get a pretty decent paycheck. Then we have the Valiant, who always like to keep things quiet, and they had EasyHan, Innovation, Becky, and Marvel all make looking for team post, and from the looks of it, they are not under negotiations with the Valiant, no surprise there, but most of these guys, I think, are in contention to maybe find a new team. EasyHan, who I had very low expectations for this year, kind of balled out, especially in the second half of the year. He was looking real good on the Sombra and the Sojourn, and might have potential for sure on one of those weaker teams that's looking to build up. And again, the same's just gonna apply for Becky and Marvel. Those two looked really good this year. Becky showed off a pretty impressive Echo and Tracer. I think he's definitely going to deserve a shout on a couple of these other teams over in Asia. Maybe even an NA team will take a chance on him. In Marvel, I just think he's a solid player overall. He proved he still belongs in this league on the Valiant, so I'd like to see him go somewhere else too. I wouldn't say any of these Valiant guys are going to get tons of offers, but they definitely will at least get some interest. I don't know if there's any guarantee any of them find a new team though, just because again, this free agency class is looking mighty stacked, but there are a few teams in theory they could each end up benefiting from. But the Valiant aren't the only team with a bunch of people potentially on their way out, as the Defiant have Crong, Muse, Finale, and Although entering free agency, but they all still are in negotiations with Toronto as we speak. In all likelihood, I'd say most of these guys probably end up getting let go, except for Crong. I think that's a guy you need to bring back. He has a lot of talent as a main support player, and I believe that him and Twilight could continue to do some really great things together, especially if Toronto kind of upgrade their team a little bit moving into the future. With Muse, Finale, and Although, on the other hand, I just don't really know. Muse, while very talented, didn't really seem like he was that great for this team, especially in the second half of the year. He just wasn't as useful for them. He didn't really seem like the right leadership figure. There was rumors he might leave the team through a trade. There are a lot of issues with Muse, and I think there's a good chance they move on from him. And then with Finale and Although, it's more so them just kind of not being great enough, not being what the team needs. They can probably do better at flex DPS, especially with the big budget that Toronto tends to have. So I probably think that they should let go of those guys, if at all possible, and move on to a better option that could give you more star power. Speaking of star power, Happy has said that he is currently looking for a team, and from the looks of it, he is not negotiating with the Glads right now, and seeing as he's a mid-season pickup, doesn't really surprise me that much. But after the season he had, Happy probably still has a place in this league. Happy's gonna draw some eyes from the type of year he had. Can you imagine maybe he's the replacement for Hydron on Florida Mayhem? That's not the worst thing in the world. What if he goes to Boston, the NYXL, Vancouver, maybe even the, I don't know, Philly Fusion as a backup? Happy's gonna have options available to him for sure. He is a veteran of this league, and I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon. That wraps up all of the people who weren't through official team announcements, at least by my count. So now let's talk about one other fun section that I think would make for a really good way to continue the discussions down in the comments below. And that comes through notable LFT players that were not on a team last year. This list is comprised of a bunch of people you probably remember that you might have fond memories of. A big one to talk about is Birdring. That's right, the man is coming out of retirement and is ready to prove himself again. It seems that his motivation is back and it's stronger than ever, and I could not be more excited about that. Birdring has been insane. His Overwatch League career is amazing. He's one of the best hit skins we'll ever see in our entire lifetime. He's been streaming and gaming still, so the skills are definitely still there, and a bunch of teams will probably look at him as a potential piece that could help them get to that next level if he still has what it takes compared to 2021, let's say. If he's still as good as he used to be, maybe he gets reunited on the LA Gladiators. There's so many different options for somebody like Birdring if he's still playing at that same level we all know he's capable of. Regardless, it's great to have him back, and I do hope that he joins the league again. Now for names that I was seriously not expecting to say. We have Haksal and Bumper declaring that they are free agents. The OG Runaway Boys are back, baby. It's a shame that Haksal didn't join the league last year because we had so much Genji play. He finally got nerfed into the ground. But regardless, it's great to see him and Bumper trying to get another shot at this. It seems like they maybe want to find a team together. I think it's cool that Haksal made a little post for Bumper saying to contact him as well. But I don't really know what's going to happen there. Do either of them still have what it takes after all of this time off? This especially goes for Bumper, right? I'd love to see this man come back into the league, but he didn't exactly end his first year in the league on the greatest note thanks to potential motivation issues behind the scenes, and he hasn't played the game professionally in years. I just don't know if Bumper has what it takes anymore. Although I do hope he does, because he's a historic player. He's a very likable presence in this community, and we've seen him play a lot of different tanks, so Overwatch 2 in theory could really benefit him. He's been a main tank and an off tank in the past. It might be to a lesser extent, but he could fill that someone type of role, you know, play the Zarya, the Sigma, the Diva, Rhine, Winston, whatever the team needs, and some people might see value in that flexibility. On the other hand though, Haksal probably is a lot better of a shot. Even when he was on his way out, he was still a solid player, so he's gonna get some eyes on him, no doubt about it. Even if he doesn't make it, he'll be getting some trials. But guess what? We have another runaway boy declaring for free agency. Slime also wants to have another crack at the league. I don't know if he really has what it takes. I don't think he looked that great on the Florida Mayhem a couple of years ago. And I don't know if he's even been that special in contenders. But boy, would I love to see a sick runaway, you know, safe haven team, so to speak, I guess you could say. Like, they all joined Toronto Defiant. You know, you have like the new and the old generation. You have Heesu, Twilight, Haksal, Slime, Bumper, Mag. That would be hilarious. Even if they're not that good, I think I'd support that team just because. I do pray all of them come back, though, just because of the nostalgia and how much I love all of them, but I'm not going to sit here and say any of them have a guarantee. If anyone has a great chance, it's Haksal, but even him, he might not be enough. Just to go down the list a bit faster now, we also have Diem, former hitscan of the Shanghai Dragons. He is throwing his hat at the Overwatch League once again. It figures it's right when Carpe retires, but regardless, he's a very talented player, and maybe he has a chance, especially if he can prove himself on the Sojourn and whatnot. We also have FD God, former Paris Eternal in San Francisco Francisco Shock main support. Rain, former LA Valiant main support. He's back from his military service. We have Erster, who is surprisingly going to try and find a team on tank rather than DPS. You have Jerry, a really good meme. Then you have Gargoyle, a big-time fan favorite for a lot of Florida fans. There are a bunch of really interesting names hitting the free agent market. Given how deep the market is, there's a solid chance most of these guys don't even sniff a new roster, but just the fact that they're motivated and they want to try is just so amazing. It brings a lot of positivity back into the community, a lot of hype, and I just can't wait to see if any of these guys at all can make a new team. And of course, we can't rule out guys that maybe left the league mid-season this year, like Eileen, Naga, amongst others. There's a bunch of free agents out there. I mean, it is absolutely loaded, and I think trials are going to be chaotic. The more likable faces that want to grind this game again, the better. That's how I see it. But anyway, that's going to do it for me, ladies and gentlemen. That's going to wrap up episode 1 of the Overwatch League 2023 off-season news recap. I know it can be a lot and it's maybe a bit overwhelming, but I hope this video helped you get informed and you enjoyed it and you found the format to be digestible. And if you really did enjoy this and you want to stay up to date with all things Overwatch League news related here in the offseason, be sure to give this video a like and subscribe to my channel if you're new, as I'll be reporting on all of the most recent news all offseason long. And never fear, my friends, if there's something I missed or if something comes out immediately after this video uploads, it'll roll over into episode 2, so stay tuned for that. And until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.